I stared at the empty chair across my Christmas table, the one where my daughter should have been sitting. The turkey was getting cold, the presents still wrapped. Then my phone buzzed with a notification, a photo of my daughter laughing on a tropical beach, the $15,000 luxury vacation I had paid for as her Christmas gift. What she didn't know was that I could still access the family chat she thought I was excluded from. The screenshots revealing their plan to ditch me sat heavy in my hands. I made a decision. I woke up early on Christmas morning with that childlike excitement I always feel, regardless of being 63 years old. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine, and outside my window, a light dusting of snow covered the lawn of my suburban home. It was going to be perfect. My daughter Amanda and her husband Jack were coming over at 9 o'clock for our traditional Christmas morning breakfast before we would all leave for the airport. I had been planning this trip for months, a luxury vacation to the Bahamas as my gift to them. $15,000 for the four of us to spend a week in paradise. It would be worth every penny to see the smile on Amanda's face. I had made her favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, crispy bacon, and fresh squeezed orange juice. The table was set with the good china, Christmas music played softly in the background, and wrapped gifts sat under the tree. 9 o'clock came and went. No Amanda, no Jack. By 9:30, I sent a text. "Hey sweetheart, did you oversleep? Breakfast is getting cold." No response. By 10, I called her cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I called Jack's phone. Same thing. By 11:30, the pancakes had grown stiff and cold. The bacon was rubbery. The fresh juice had separated, looking sad in the crystal glasses I'd inherited from my late wife, Elaine. The silence in the house was deafening. I tried not to worry. Maybe their car broke down. Maybe they overslept. Maybe they lost track of time opening gifts at their apartment. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Amanda had never missed Christmas morning breakfast. Not once in 34 years. Just as I was about to drive to their apartment, my phone chimed with a text message from Amanda. "Sorry, Dad. We decided to leave early for the trip. Catch you when we get back." I stared at the message in disbelief. Leave early? Without me? I was the one who had booked everything. I had all the confirmation numbers, the itinerary, the resort vouchers. How could they have left already? With trembling fingers, I called the airline. Yes, they confirmed. 3 passengers had boarded the 7 a.m. flight to Nassau. Amanda Wilson, Jack Wilson, and 2 additional travelers. Patricia and George Wilson, Jack's parents. My heart sank to the pit of my stomach. Jack's parents? They weren't part of the original plan. This was supposed to be a trip for Amanda, Jack, and me. Still in my Christmas sweater, I sat down heavily at my dining room table. Surrounded by the breakfast no one would eat, the presents no one would open. Confusion gave way to a sharp pain in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. Out of habit, I opened Instagram on my phone. Amanda was always posting photos there. And there it was, posted 30 minutes ago. Amanda, Jack, and his parents, all grinning in front of a turquoise ocean, tropical drinks in hand. The caption read, "Christmas in paradise with the people who matter most." The people who matter most. I looked around at my empty house, decorated for a Christmas that wouldn't happen, and felt something crack inside me. My daughter had left me alone on Christmas Day to take a trip I had paid for. And somehow, Jack's parents had taken my place. As I sat there trying to make sense of it all, I had no idea that what I'd discovered was only the beginning of a betrayal that went much deeper than I could have imagined. The house felt too quiet as I cleaned up the Christmas breakfast that nobody ate. Each plate I scraped into the garbage was like tossing away another piece of my expectations. I had been looking forward to this vacation for months, the first real holiday I'd planned since Elaine passed away 3 years ago. My financial advisor had raised his eyebrows at the expense, but I had insisted it would be worth it. "Family is everything, Ted," I'd told him. "What else am I saving for if not to create memories with my daughter?" As I rinsed dishes, memories flooded back. Amanda as a little girl, squealing with delight at her new bicycle. Amanda as a teenager, trying not to smile as she opened the concert tickets she'd been hinting about for months. Amanda on her wedding day, 5 years ago, radiant and hopeful. Things had changed since she married Jack. At first, the changes were subtle. She called less frequently. Our Sunday dinners became monthly, then quarterly. Each time I suggested getting together, there was an excuse. Jack had to work. They had plans with his family. They were too tired. I never said anything. I didn't want to be that father-in-law, the one who complained about not seeing his daughter enough. I wanted to be supportive of her marriage. Maybe that was my first mistake. I tried calling Amanda again, straight to voicemail. I sent another text. Amanda, please call me when you get this. I'm confused about what's happening with the trip we planned. No response. I checked the flights again. Our original booking had been for a noon departure. Somehow, they had changed everything and left hours earlier. And with Jack's parents instead of me, I went to my home office to find the folder with all the vacation documents. It wasn't in the filing cabinet where I kept important papers. Strange. I specifically remembered putting it there. I searched through stacks of mail, drawers, even checked the kitchen counter. Nothing. Then I remembered. The shared cloud drive. Amanda had set it up for me last year, so we could exchange photos and documents easily. I rarely used it, but the vacation folder should be there. I logged in and found a folder labeled Bahamas Trip. Inside were all the confirmation numbers, resort information, and a detailed itinerary, but different from what I remembered. This itinerary had been modified 2 weeks ago to include Jack's parents. My name had been removed entirely. As I scrolled through the documents, trying to make sense of it all, I noticed another folder I hadn't seen before. Family chat backups. It must have been syncing automatically from Amanda's phone. I hesitated before opening it. It felt like an invasion of privacy. But this was my vacation, paid for with my money, that I had somehow been excluded from. I needed answers. The folder contained exported chat logs from a group conversation between Amanda, Jack, and his parents. I opened the most recent file and began reading. Jack, Dad's all set to take your place on the trip. Baxter still has no idea. Amanda, I feel a little bad about it. Patricia, Jack's mother, don't feel bad, honey. Your dad will be fine on his own for Christmas. Men his age don't care about holidays like we do. George, Jack's father. Besides, he'd just slow us down with all his planning and schedules. Remember that dinner where he kept talking about his retirement? Nearly put me to sleep. Jack. Exactly. He's too boring for this vacation. We'll have way more fun without him micromanaging everything. Amanda, I guess you're right. He'll probably be happier with his routine anyway. Jack, trust me, it's better this way. He's paid for everything already, so we might as well enjoy it. I've got him removed from all the bookings. We'll just tell him there was a mix-up with the reservations. Patricia, perfect. And we'll make sure to send him lots of photos so he doesn't feel too left out. They all added laughing emojis. My hands shook as I scrolled through weeks of similar conversations. They had been planning this for over a month. Jack had systematically removed me from all the reservations, added his parents instead, and they had deliberately chosen to fly out early so I wouldn't show up at the airport and discover their scheme. And Amanda had gone along with all of it. The betrayal cut deep, a knife twisted in my gut. Not just the fact that they had excluded me, but the casual cruelty of their comments. Too boring. Would slow them down. Doesn't care about holidays. 34 years of Christmas mornings. 34 years of birthdays and school plays and graduations. 34 years of putting her first, always. And this is what she thought of me. As I sat there in my silent house, surrounded by Christmas decorations that suddenly seemed garish and meaningless, I discovered something else in the cloud drive. A folder labeled Trip Expenses. Inside was a screenshot of my credit card statement. They hadn't just taken the trip I paid for. They had used my credit card to upgrade their flights to first class, add premium excursions, and extend their stay by 3 days. An additional $4,000 I hadn't authorized. The sadness that had been weighing on me all morning began to shift, transforming into something else entirely. A slow-burning anger started to build in my chest. I had always been generous with Amanda, perhaps too generous. I had never expected to be paid back for anything. But this wasn't about money. This was about respect, about family, about gratitude. I looked at the framed photo on my desk. Amanda and me at her college graduation, both of us beaming with pride. When had that smiling girl turned into someone who would conspire behind my back? When had I become someone whose feelings mattered so little? As the reality of their deception sank in, I knew I had a decision to make. I could do what I had always done: swallow my hurt feelings, pretend everything was fine, and welcome them back with open arms when they returned. Or I could finally stand up for myself. The choice, I realized, was obvious. For the first time in decades, I needed to put myself first. I reached for my phone and began making calls. By evening, the festive Christmas lights around my neighborhood seemed to mock the darkness I felt inside. I had spent hours staring at those messages, reading and rereading them, looking for some explanation that would hurt less. There wasn't one. I decided to try calling Amanda one more time. To my surprise, she answered on the fourth ring. "Dad, Merry Christmas." Her voice sounded carefree, the sound of waves and laughter in the background. "Amanda." I struggled to keep my voice steady. "What happened today? We had plans." "Oh, about that." Her tone shifted, becoming defensive. There was a last-minute change. The resort called and said they had availability for today instead of tomorrow, so we had to rush. "I meant to call you, but everything was so hectic." Another lie. "The chat logs showed they had planned this weeks ago. And Jack's parents? How did they end up on our family trip?" A pause. "Well, they had nowhere to go for Christmas, and there was an extra room available, so it just made sense. You don't mind, right? You're always saying the more the merrier." I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm. "Amanda, I booked and paid for this trip for the three of us. There was no extra room. That was my room. I'm looking at the cloud drive right now. I can see all the messages." Silence on the other end. Then, muffled sounds like she was covering the phone and speaking to someone else. When she came back on, her voice had a practiced casualness. "Dad, you're making this into a bigger deal than it is. We were going to surprise you with a nice quiet Christmas at home since you've been talking about how exhausting travel is lately. Jack's parents were going to be alone, so we thought it would be nice to include them. I don't understand why you're upset." More lies. I had never complained about travel being exhausting. In fact, I had been excitedly researching Bahamian attractions for months. "Let me talk to him." I heard Jack's voice in the background, then the sound of the phone changing hands. "Baxter, hey, Merry Christmas." Jack's tone was overly familiar, almost condescending. "Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We thought you'd appreciate some quiet time to yourself instead of dealing with all the airport hassle. And my folks were thrilled to join us. It's all good, right?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Jack, I planned this trip as a gift for all of us. You changed the reservations without telling me. You left without me on Christmas morning. How is that a misunderstanding? Come on, Baxter, don't be like that. It's Christmas. Be a sport. We'll bring you back a nice souvenir." He chuckled, as if we were sharing a joke. I also noticed $4,000 in additional charges on my credit card that I didn't authorize. Premium excursions, first-class upgrades, extended stay. Would you like to explain that? Another pause. When Jack spoke again, his voice had lost its friendly veneer. "Look, Amanda said you wanted us to have the full experience. Those charges were necessary to make the trip special. If you're going to be so uptight about money, maybe we should cut this conversation short. You're ruining Amanda's Christmas." I heard Amanda in the background. "Is he mad? Tell him not to be mad." Jack, put Amanda back on the phone. "She's busy right now. Look, we're about to head to dinner. How about we talk when we get back next week? You can take some time to cool off, and we'll sort everything out then. Sound good? Great. Merry Christmas." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, stunned by the dismissive way I had been treated. Not only had they excluded me and taken advantage of my generosity, but they couldn't even be bothered to have an honest conversation about it. As I pondered what to do next, my phone dinged with a notification. Amanda had posted another photo on Instagram, the four of them dressed for dinner at the resort's 5-star restaurant. Another premium experience I had apparently paid for. The caption read, "Christmas dinner with my wonderful family. Couldn't ask for more. Couldn't ask for more." as if I didn't exist at all. Then another notification appeared. A charge on my credit card for $800 from the resort spa. They were continuing to use my card for additional expenses without even asking. Something shifted inside me. All my life, I had been the peacekeeper, the one who let things go to avoid conflict, the one who gave and gave without expecting anything in return. That had been especially true after Elaine died, when I was so afraid of losing Amanda too that I would have done anything to keep her happy. But in that moment, watching them spend my money while excluding me from a trip I had planned and paid for, I realized that my generosity wasn't being met with gratitude. It was being met with entitlement, and it had to stop. I made a decision that would change everything. I picked up my phone again, but this time I wasn't calling Amanda or Jack. I was calling the resort, the airline, and my credit card company. If they wanted to exclude me from this trip, then they would experience what it truly meant to be on their own. The customer service representative at the Grand Bahama Resort sounded sympathetic as I explained the situation. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm so sorry to hear about this misunderstanding with your family," she said, her voice gentle. "It's not a misunderstanding," I replied, my resolve strengthening. "My credit card was used without my authorization for additional charges. I need to address this immediately." I spent the next hour on the phone with the resort. First, I canceled all the remaining excursions that had been booked: the private yacht day, the helicopter tour, the couple's massages. Then I removed my credit card from the room charges, meaning they would have to provide their own payment method for any additional expenses. "And one more thing," I said before ending the call. "Please let the guests know that the reservation has been modified, but don't mention that I was the one who made these changes. I'll be handling that conversation personally." Next, I called the airline to cancel their upgraded return flights. They would still have basic economy seats, but the first-class experience they had charged to my card without asking, gone. Finally, I contacted my credit card company to dispute the unauthorized charges and to ensure no further charges could be made without my explicit approval. The representative flagged my card for additional verification for any new charges over $100. "Is there anything else we can help you with, Mr. Reynolds?" the credit card representative asked. "Yes," I said after a moment's thought. "I'd like to speak with someone about changing all my account passwords and setting up additional security measures." Over the next hour, I systematically secured all my financial information. New passwords, new security questions, two-factor authentication on everything. I removed my credit card information from all shared family accounts. I even called Ted, my financial advisor, despite it being Christmas evening. "Baxter, everything okay?" Ted sounded concerned. We had been friends for over 20 years, and he knew I wouldn't call on Christmas without good reason. "I need to review all the financial support I've been providing for Amanda and Jack," I explained, then gave him a brief summary of what had happened. Ted was quiet for a moment. "I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for a while, Baxter. Let me pull up their file." What Ted revealed was eye-opening. Over the past 5 years, since Amanda and Jack had gotten married, I had given them over $130,000, not including this trip. I had paid for their honeymoon, contributed to their house down payment, covered 6 months of mortgage payments when Jack was between jobs, paid off Amanda's remaining student loans, and given them generous birthday and Christmas checks every year. "And the joint investment account you set up for them," Ted continued. "They've withdrawn nearly all of it. $47,000 that was supposed to be for their future or for grandchildren's education." The amount shocked me. I knew I had been generous, but I hadn't realized the full extent. "What have they been spending it on?" Ted hesitated. "I don't have visibility into their personal expenditures, but based on what Amanda mentioned when she called for the last withdrawal, I believe they've been funding Jack's parents' lifestyle as well." "Jack's parents?" I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You mean to tell me I've been indirectly supporting his parents too?" "I can't confirm that definitively," Ted said carefully, "but it would align with the timing and amounts of the withdrawals." I thanked Ted for his honesty and hung up, my mind reeling from this new information, the picture becoming clearer with every revelation. I had been used as an ATM, not just by Jack and Amanda, but potentially by his parents as well. And now they had the audacity to exclude me from a trip I had paid for, while continuing to spend my money freely. As the evening wore on, I received an unexpected call from the resort manager himself. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Daniel Sanderson, General Manager at Grand Bahama Resort. I wanted to personally follow up on the changes to your party's reservation." "I appreciate that, Mr. Sanderson. I notice this is a rather unusual situation," he said delicately, "and I should inform you that this isn't the first time we've had an issue with Mr. Wilson." My interest piqued. "What do you mean?" The manager seemed to choose his words carefully. "Last year, we had a similar situation involving Mr. Wilson and an older gentleman who had paid for their stay. There was a dispute about unauthorized charges and changes to the original party. I normally wouldn't share this, but given the circumstances and the fact that your card is on file, I felt you should know." So this wasn't the first time Jack had pulled something like this. It was a pattern, a scheme he had used before. "Thank you for telling me, Mr. Sanderson. I appreciate your discretion." After hanging up, I sat in my quiet house, Christmas tree lights blinking in the growing darkness. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose, replacing the hurt and confusion. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It was about breaking a cycle of enabling behavior that had allowed Jack, and by extension, Amanda, to take advantage of my generosity for far too long. I opened my laptop and began making a detailed list of every financial tie I needed to sever or modify. Joint accounts, automatic transfers, insurance policies where they were beneficiaries, the deed to the vacation cabin that I had planned to sign over next year. Everything needed to be reconsidered in light of what I now knew. As I worked, a strange sensation grew within me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. Power, control over my own life and resources, the ability to say no after years of only saying yes. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the money itself. It was about reclaiming my dignity and self-respect, about establishing boundaries that should have been in place long ago. By midnight, as Christmas Day came to a close, my plan was complete. I had taken back my financial power, removed myself from the role of family ATM, and set the stage for whatever would come next. They had made their choices, thinking there would be no consequences. Now they would discover that I could make choices too. I went to bed alone in my quiet house, but for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but I would face them standing tall, secure in the knowledge that I was finally taking care of myself. The day after Christmas dawned cold and clear. I made myself a simple breakfast, trying to ignore the leftover holiday decorations that now seemed to taunt me with their cheerfulness. My phone had been quiet. No messages from Amanda or Jack. They were probably still enjoying their tropical getaway, blissfully unaware of the changes I had made. That changed at precisely 10:17 in the morning. My phone rang, displaying Amanda's name. I let it ring 4 times before answering, taking deep breaths to center myself. "Hello, Amanda." "Dad." Her voice sounded frantic. "There's something wrong with our reservations. We showed up for the dolphin excursion this morning, and they said it had been canceled. And the front desk just told us your credit card isn't authorized for room charges anymore." I kept my voice calm and even. "Yes, that's correct." A pause. "What do you mean, that's correct? Did you do this?" "I did. I canceled the unauthorized charges on my credit card and removed it from the room. I also canceled the excursions I didn't approve." "But why would you do that?" She sounded genuinely confused, as if the concept of consequences was entirely foreign to her. "Amanda, you and Jack used my credit card without permission to upgrade flights, extend your stay, and add excursions. You included Jack's parents on a trip I planned and paid for as a gift for our family. And you did all this behind my back, after deliberately excluding me from a Christmas vacation that was my gift to you." "Dad, you're overreacting. It's not that big a deal." "It is to me, Amanda. You left me alone on Christmas. You and Jack and his parents planned this for weeks, laughing about how I was too boring to include. Yes, I saw the chat logs." Another long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "You weren't supposed to see those, clearly, but I did. And now I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. setting boundaries. I heard muffled voices in the background. Then Jack came on the line. His tone was immediately confrontational. "Baxter, what the hell do you think you're doing? You can't just strand us here." "I'm not stranding anyone, Jack. You still have your basic economy return flights. You still have your room. You just don't have access to my credit card for additional expenses." "This is ridiculous. We're in the middle of a vacation. My parents are here." "Yes, your parents. Who weren't supposed to be on this trip. Who took my place without anyone bothering to tell me. Those parents." Jack's voice turned threatening. "You have no right to do this. We'll dispute these charges. I cut him off. "Jack, let me be perfectly clear. Every charge I canceled was unauthorized by me. Every change I made is well within my legal rights. If you want to dispute anything, feel free. But I have all the documentation, including the chat logs where you explicitly discuss using my credit card without permission and changing my reservation without my knowledge." Silence on the other end. Then I heard Patricia, Jack's mother, in the background. "What's going on? What did he say?" Jack covered the phone, but I could still make out his muffled explanation and the resulting outcry from his parents. When he came back on the line, his voice was tight with anger. "You've made your point. Now fix this." "No, Jack, I won't. Actions have consequences. You chose to exclude me and take advantage of my generosity. Now you can deal with the results of that choice. This is about Amanda, isn't it? You're punishing her because you're lonely and bitter about being left out." I felt a flash of anger, but kept my voice steady. "This isn't about punishment. It's about respect and responsibility, something you seem to know very little about." I ended the call before he could respond, my heart pounding in my chest. I had stood my ground. For perhaps the first time in my relationship with Jack, I had refused to be manipulated or intimidated. My phone immediately began ringing again. I declined the call, then another, and another. I finally silenced the phone, watching as the missed call notifications piled up. An hour later, my home phone rang. A number few people had. I answered it, half expecting to hear Amanda or Jack, but instead, a woman's voice I didn't immediately recognize came through the line. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Samantha Wilson, Jack's sister." I had met Samantha only a few times, at Amanda and Jack's wedding and a handful of family events. She had always seemed more grounded than her brother. "Samantha, this is a surprise. I'm calling to apologize," she said, her voice sincere. "Jack just called my husband in a panic, asking to borrow money for the rest of their trip. When Tom asked why, the whole story came out." "I see." I wasn't sure what else to say. "Mr. Reynolds, I want you to know that not everyone in our family is like Jack and my parents. What they did to you was wrong on every level. Excluding you from a trip you paid for, taking advantage of your generosity. It's shameful." Her candor caught me off guard. "Thank you for saying that. It's not the first time they've done something like this," she continued, confirming what the resort manager had told me. "Last year, it was our uncle who paid for a trip to Colorado. They pulled almost the same stunt, convincing him at the last minute that he wouldn't enjoy the activities they had planned. So the pattern went beyond just me. It was a family scheme, targeting generous relatives and taking advantage of their goodwill." "I'm not surprised," I admitted. "The resort manager mentioned there had been a similar incident. That sounds about right. Mr. Reynolds, I don't expect this to change anything about what you've done. You were absolutely right to protect yourself. But I wanted you to know that Tom and I don't condone their behavior. And if there's ever anything we can do, thank you, Samantha. I appreciate your call more than you know." After we hung up, I felt an odd sense of validation. It wasn't just me overreacting or being too sensitive, as Amanda had implied. Others could see the wrongness of what they had done. Throughout the day, the calls continued. I let them all go to voicemail. Around 4 in the afternoon, I finally listened to some of the messages. Amanda sounded increasingly desperate, explaining that Jack's parents were blaming her for the situation. Jack sounded angry, making vague threats about repercussions if I didn't restore the original arrangements. And to my surprise, there were 2 messages from Patricia and George themselves, their tones fluctuating between placating and indignant. I didn't return any of the calls, Let them sort it out amongst themselves. By evening, I received an email from the resort manager. Mr. Reynolds, I wanted to inform you that your party has been asked to provide a credit card for incidentals and remaining charges, as per our policy. Mr. Wilson initially refused but has since complied after being informed that they would otherwise need to vacate the property. I thought you might want to be aware of the situation, so reality was setting in for them. Without access to my funds, they were being forced to pay their own way, perhaps for the first time. I spent that evening at home, reflecting on how dramatically my relationship with Amanda had changed over the years. When had my sweet, thoughtful daughter transformed into someone who could leave her father alone on Christmas without a second thought? When had I become nothing more than a financial resource to her and her husband? More importantly, what would happen now? I had taken a stand, but at what cost? Would this destroy my relationship with my only child? Or was this the necessary shock to the system that might finally bring about change? I had no answers, only questions and a growing sense that whatever happened next would irrevocably alter the course of our family's future. What I didn't know was that the true reckoning was still to come, and it would begin in the early morning hours with a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. The insistent buzzing of my phone dragged me from a restless sleep. Bleary-eyed, I fumbled for it on the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen. 6 o'clock in the morning. The notification showed 64 missed calls. 64. Most were from Amanda, some from Jack, and several from numbers I didn't recognize but assumed belonged to his parents. As I stared at the screen, it lit up again with Amanda's call. This time, I answered. "Hello? Dad." Amanda's voice was raw, as if she'd been crying for hours. "Thank God you picked up. Everything is falling apart here." I sat up in bed, switching on the lamp. "What's happening, Amanda?" "They're kicking us out of the resort. The manager said we have to pay for the extended stay by noon today or leave. Jack's credit cards are maxed out, and his parents say they didn't bring enough cash because they thought everything was covered. We're stranded, Dad. You have to help us." I took a deep breath. "Amanda, you're not stranded. You have your return tickets. They're just not first class anymore. But we extended the stay. We're supposed to be here for 3 more days. All our stuff is unpacked, and we have nowhere to go. And Jack's parents are blaming me for everything. They keep saying I should have made sure you were okay with the changes." Her voice broke on a sob. "They're right," I said quietly. "You should have. I know. I know that now. I'm sorry. Please, Dad, just put your card back on the room. We'll pay you back for everything as soon as we get home, I promise." The old me would have given in immediately, unable to bear hearing my daughter in distress. But I remembered the chat logs, the casual cruelty of their exclusion, the years of financial manipulation that Ted had revealed. "No, Amanda. I won't be putting my card back on the room." "What?" "But Dad, listen to me. You and Jack and his parents made a decision. You chose to exclude me from a trip I paid for. You chose to use my credit card without permission. These were adult choices, and now you need to deal with the adult consequences. We made a mistake. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Amanda. A mistake is forgetting to call or accidentally double booking. This was a deliberate plan carried out over weeks, involving multiple people, specifically designed to take advantage of me while excluding me. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." I heard her crying, then muffled sounds as the phone changed hands. Jack's voice came through, taut with barely contained fury. "Listen here, Baxter. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but this ends now. If you don't fix this situation immediately, there will be serious consequences. Legal consequences. I have friends who are attorneys, and what you've done could be considered—" "Be very careful about your next words, Jack," I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. "Because nothing I've done is remotely illegal. I canceled unauthorized charges on my own credit card. I removed my payment method from a reservation that was fraudulently altered. If anyone has legal exposure here, it's you, for using my credit card without permission, which, I remind you, I have documented evidence of from your own chat logs." Silence on the other end. "Furthermore," I continued, "I've spoken with the resort manager and your sister Samantha. This isn't the first time you've pulled this kind of scheme, is it? There was a similar incident last year with your uncle's Colorado trip. More silence, then a string of profanities, before the phone apparently changed hands again. This time, it was George, Jack's father. Baxter, this is George. Look, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding here. Patricia and I had no idea that you hadn't approved us joining the trip. Jack and Amanda told us you had suggested it because you couldn't make it yourself. If we'd known the truth, we never would have agreed to this. His tone sounded sincere. But after everything I'd learned, I was skeptical. George, I saw the chat logs. You were part of the conversations planning to exclude me. A pause. What chat logs? The group chat between you, Patricia, Jack, and Amanda, where you discussed how I was too boring for the vacation and would just slow you down. Where you all planned how to remove me from the reservations without me finding out until it was too late. Another long pause. Baxter, I was never in any group chat like that. Patricia and I don't even use those messaging apps. Jack just told us the changes to the trip and said you had approved everything. I felt a flicker of doubt. Could George be telling the truth? Had Jack and Amanda fabricated messages to make it look like his parents were complicit? If that's true, George, I apologize for the misunderstanding. But it doesn't change the fact that this trip was planned and paid for by me, and I was deliberately excluded. I understand, and I'm truly sorry that happened. If we'd known, well, we would have insisted you join us, or we wouldn't have come at all. He sighed heavily. The truth is, Baxter, we couldn't have afforded this trip on our own. We're on a fixed income, and this kind of luxury vacation is well beyond our means. Jack told us it was a gift from both him and you. I closed my eyes, absorbing this new information. If George was being honest, then Jack had manipulated not just me, but his own parents as well. Look, George, I've already rebooked your original return flights. Economy class, but you'll get home. As for the extended stay and additional expenses, I'm afraid those will need to be handled by Jack and Amanda. I understand. And Baxter, for what it's worth, I am truly sorry about all this. Patricia and I both are. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed, processing the conversation. If George was telling the truth, it painted an even more disturbing picture of Jack's manipulations, using his own parents as unwitting pawns in his scheme to take advantage of my generosity. My phone rang again almost immediately. Amanda, again. I answered. Dad, please, she began, her voice breaking. I don't know what to do. Jack is furious. His parents are upset. Everyone's blaming me. The manager says we have to pay or leave by noon. I don't have that kind of money. For the first time, I heard something different in her voice. Not just panic or self-pity, but genuine remorse and the dawning realization of the severity of what had happened. Amanda, I said gently but firmly, where is Jack now? He's arguing with his parents in their room. I want you to go somewhere private, where we can talk honestly. Can you do that? I heard movement, a door closing. Okay, I'm alone now. I need you to tell me the truth. Were George and Patricia really part of planning to exclude me, or did Jack just tell them I couldn't make it? She was quiet for a moment. Then her voice came back, small and ashamed. Jack told them you had canceled at the last minute because of health concerns. He said you insisted they take your place so the money wouldn't go to waste. She paused, then added, they didn't know, Dad. They really didn't. And the chat logs I saw with their names? Jack created fake accounts with their names. She started crying again. He said it would help convince me that everyone thought it was a good idea, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. God, Dad, I'm so sorry. I knew it wasn't right, but he kept saying you wouldn't mind, that you'd understand, that you'd be happier at home anyway. Was this Jack's idea from the start? A hesitation then. Yes, he said. He said you were getting older and the trip would be too strenuous for you, that you were just paying for it to make me happy but secretly dreaded going. I didn't fully believe him, but I went along with it because it was easier than standing up to him. The pain in her voice was real, but her words brought no satisfaction, only sadness at how far our relationship had deteriorated. That she could believe, even for a moment, that I wouldn't want to spend Christmas with her, that I would secretly dread a trip I had spent months planning. Amanda, listen to me carefully. I'm not going to fix this situation for you. You're 34 years old. It's time you stood up for yourself and made some hard choices. What am I supposed to do? You have options. You can find a way to pay for the additional days yourselves. You can check out and find less expensive accommodations for the remaining time. Or you can take the flights I've rebooked and come home early. But whatever you decide, it needs to be your decision, not Jack's. And not mine. Silence. Then a shaky inhale. I understand. And Amanda, when you get back, we need to have a serious conversation about your relationship with Jack and about our relationship as father and daughter. Because something has gone very wrong here, and it can't continue this way. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. After we hung up, I felt drained but oddly at peace. For the first time in years, I had spoken honestly to my daughter about the dynamics between us. I had refused to rescue her from a situation of her own making, and though it was painful, it felt like the first step towards something healthier for both of us. Whether she would take that step with me remained to be seen. I made myself breakfast and coffee, watching the winter sun rise over my snowy backyard. The Christmas decorations that had seemed so depressing yesterday now looked different to me, not symbols of abandonment, but reminders of traditions worth preserving, even if they took new forms in the future. Whatever happened next, I had finally stood up for myself. And in doing so, I might have given Amanda the opportunity to stand up for herself as well. That, I realized, might be the most valuable gift I could give her. 3 days later, I was in my workshop refinishing an old oak bookcase when I heard a car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I saw Amanda getting out of a taxi, alone, pulling a single suitcase behind her. I wiped my hands on a rag and went to meet her, uncertain what to expect. She looked exhausted, her face pale and drawn, eyes red-rimmed from crying or lack of sleep or both. We stood facing each other on the porch, the January cold bringing color to her cheeks. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Can I come in?" she finally asked, her voice small. I nodded and held the door open. She wheeled her suitcase inside and stood awkwardly in the entryway, looking around as if seeing the house for the first time. "You took down the Christmas decorations," she observed. "Yes." It seemed time. She nodded, still not meeting my eyes. "Dad, I don't even know where to begin." I gestured toward the kitchen. "Let's sit down. I'll make some coffee." The familiar ritual of brewing coffee gave us both a moment to gather our thoughts. When we finally sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the scene felt reminiscent of countless conversations we'd had over the years. Homework problems, college applications, relationship advice. But this was different. The weight of what had happened hung between us like a physical presence. "Jack and I had a huge fight after you and I spoke," she began, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "I told him I knew what he'd done, the fake chat accounts, lying to his parents about you canceling. Everything." She took a shaky breath. "He didn't even deny it. He just got angry that I was taking your side instead of supporting him." I stayed silent, letting her continue. "His parents were horrified when they found out the truth. They insisted on leaving the resort immediately. They used their emergency credit card to book economy flights home and left that afternoon." She looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. "They apologized to me before they left. Said they never would have gone along with it if they'd known. George even tried to call you again to apologize directly." "He did," I confirmed. "We had a good conversation." She nodded, then continued. "After they left, Jack and I stayed one more night. We had to put the room on my emergency credit card, the one I keep for car repairs. It maxed it out completely." She gave a bitter laugh. "The thing is, Dad, once his parents were gone and we couldn't keep spending your money, Jack lost all interest in the vacation. He spent the whole time on his phone, ignoring me, making arrangements with friends back home." She took a sip of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. I realized something sitting alone on that beautiful beach that was supposed to be a family Christmas celebration. This wasn't just about this trip. This was a pattern. Jack has been controlling everything. Our finances, our social life, even my relationship with you, for years. And I let him do it because it was easier than fighting. "Amanda," I started, but she shook her head. "Please, let me finish." I need to say this. She took a deep breath. The next morning, I told Jack I was leaving, taking an earlier flight home to talk to you. He got furious, said if I left, I was choosing you over him, said I had to decide where my loyalties were. She looked directly at me, her eyes clear despite the tears. So I chose. I booked a separate flight home and left him there. He's still at the resort until tomorrow, using the return ticket you rebooked. I reached across the table and took her hand. That must have been difficult. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most necessary. She squeezed my hand. Dad, I am so deeply sorry for what we did to you, for leaving you alone on Christmas, for taking advantage of your generosity, for not standing up to Jack when he started manipulating everyone. There's no excuse for it. None. Her sincerity was palpable, but I needed to be sure this wasn't just another emotional reaction that would fade with time. What happens now, Amanda? With you and Jack? With us? She released my hand and sat back in her chair. I don't know exactly, but I do know I need to make some major changes. Jack and I think we need a separation. At minimum, I've been blind to so many red flags for so long. That's a big decision. It is. But this situation has forced me to see things I've been ignoring for years. The way he isolates me from you. The way he spends money we don't have. The way he manipulates everyone around him to get what he wants. She shook her head. I can't unsee it now. And what about us? I asked quietly. That's up to you, Dad. I've done something unforgivable. I would understand if you needed time or space or if things could never be the same between us. I considered her words carefully before responding. Amanda, there's very little I wouldn't forgive you for. You're my daughter, and I love you unconditionally. But forgiveness doesn't mean there aren't consequences or that we don't need to rebuild trust. I know, she whispered. What happened hurt me deeply. Not just the vacation, but the realization that somewhere along the way, our relationship became transactional, that my value seemed to be measured by what I could provide financially. She flinched, but didn't deny it. I've played my part in that dynamic, I admitted. Perhaps I've been too eager to solve problems with money rather than addressing the underlying issues. Too afraid of losing you to set appropriate boundaries. Dad, no. This isn't your fault. I'm not taking blame for Jack's manipulations or for the choices you made. But I am acknowledging that healthy relationships have healthy boundaries, and I haven't been good at establishing those. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling around us. So where do we go from here? Amanda finally asked. Forward, I said simply. One step at a time. With honesty and better boundaries on both sides. Over the next few hours, we talked more openly than we had in years. Amanda shared her growing concerns about Jack's behavior patterns, not just with money but in other aspects of their marriage. I told her about my conversations with Ted, my financial advisor, and the full extent of the financial support I had provided over the years. I had no idea it was that much, she said, looking genuinely shocked when I mentioned the total amount. Jack always made it sound like you wanted to help, that it made you happy to support us. It did make me happy to support you when you needed it, I clarified. But there's a difference between support and enabling, between generosity and being taken advantage of. She nodded slowly. I understand that now. As evening approached, I made a simple dinner, and we continued our conversation at the dining table, the same table where I had sat alone on Christmas Day. What will you do about living arrangements? I asked as we cleared the dishes. If you're serious about the separation, I've been thinking about that. I can stay with my friend Jessica for a while, at least until I figure things out. Her spare room is tiny, but it would give me some independence. I considered this. I have another suggestion. The apartment above the garage has been sitting empty since my tenant moved out 3 months ago. It's small, but it has everything you'd need. You could stay there while you sort things out, close enough that we could continue working on our relationship, but separate enough to give you your own space. Amanda looked surprised. You'd do that for me? After everything? With conditions, I said firmly. First, you pay a fair market rent. I've checked, and $800 a month is reasonable for the neighborhood. Second, we continue having these honest conversations, even when they're difficult. And third, you get some professional help to work through what's happened with Jack and to understand your part in it. She considered this, then nodded. Those are fair conditions. But Dad, I don't know if I can afford the rent right away. Jack and I have joint accounts, and if I'm leaving him, I understand that. Which brings me to another boundary. I won't be providing financial support beyond the apartment for now. That means you'll need to find work that can cover your expenses. I'm happy to help you update your resume or practice for interviews, but the job and the income need to be yours. To my relief, instead of looking disappointed, Amanda straightened her shoulders. That's fair, more than fair. I have my teaching certification. I can apply for substitute positions right away while looking for something permanent. That sounds like a good plan. Later that night, as Amanda settled into the guest room, I sat in my study reflecting on the day's events. There was still so much uncertainty ahead. Amanda's marriage might or might not survive this crisis. Our father-daughter relationship was taking its first tentative steps toward healing. The financial entanglements would take time to fully unravel, but for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about the future. Not because everything was resolved, but because we were finally being honest with each other. We were facing problems instead of avoiding them. We were setting boundaries instead of enabling destructive patterns. 1 year later, Amanda and I sat at the same dining table, but the atmosphere could not have been more different. The Christmas turkey was golden brown, the sides were plentiful, and most importantly, the company was genuine. Amanda had moved into the garage apartment as planned and had found a full-time teaching position at a local elementary school. After 3 months of separation and counseling, she had filed for divorce from Jack, a process that was finally nearing completion. I had stuck to my boundaries, offering emotional support but requiring Amanda to stand on her own financially. The transition hadn't been easy for either of us. There were difficult conversations, moments of backsliding, and times when the old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But we persevered, and sitting across from me now was not the entitled woman who had abandoned me last Christmas, but the daughter I had raised, compassionate, responsible, and genuine. I was thinking, I said as we enjoyed our dessert, about planning a trip for spring break. Nothing extravagant, maybe a weekend at the cabin by the lake. If you're interested, Amanda smiled, the expression reaching her eyes in a way I hadn't seen in years. I'd like that, Dad, but only if we split the costs. I've been saving specifically for us to do something together. I nodded, feeling a swell of pride at how far she had come. Deal. Later, as we sat by the fireplace with cups of hot chocolate, Amanda looked at me thoughtfully. You know, last Christmas was the worst day of my life. But in a strange way, it was also the beginning of something better. If you hadn't stood your ground, if you had just forgiven everything and gone back to the way things were, I might never have found the courage to make these changes. I considered her words. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for each other isn't to smooth the path, but to illuminate the obstacles so they can be overcome. I've learned that the hard way, she agreed. But I'm grateful for the lesson, even if the teaching method was painful. As the fire crackled and snow began to fall outside, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of betrayal had transformed into the foundation for something stronger and more authentic between us. By refusing to enable behavior that was harmful to both of us, I had given Amanda the opportunity to grow, and had grown myself in the process. The greatest gift, I realized, wasn't the presents under the tree or even the time spent together. It was the hard-won wisdom that true love includes boundaries, that respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship, and that it's never too late to break destructive patterns and build something better in their place. What a difference a year makes. From the depths of betrayal to the heights of redemption. From isolation to connection, from enabling to empowering. The journey hadn't been easy, but sitting here with my daughter, both of us changed for the better. I knew it had been worth every difficult step. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? It's one of the hardest things we do in life, but sometimes the most necessary. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your experience. And if you found value in this journey of healing and redemption, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do is stand firm in our own worth. Until next time, Take care of yourselves and each other.